The cold water struck without warning. It hit the young woman directly on the crown of her head, seeping instantly through the cheap fabric of her baseball cap, cascading down her scalp and soaking her neck, her plain gray t-shirt clinging to her skin within seconds. Droplets splashed onto the worn, pale tile floor of the Crest Hill Division Police Station, forming dark streaks that spread slowly outward. The air reeked of stale coffee, old papers, and disinfectant struggling to hide the mustiness. She stood frozen, shoulders rigid, arms stiff, a silent figure stunned by shock and humiliation. No screams, no curses, just a single gasp lodged in her throat, trembling on the edge of rage and disbelief. Water streamed steadily from her hair, soaking the collar of her shirt and dripping from her fingertips, pooling at her feet. Behind the oak-paneled desk, Officer Gerald Muntz, a red-faced man with thinning gray hair and a smirk that spoke of years of unchecked arrogance, still held the empty plastic water bottle in his fist. He looked down at her with open disdain, pride swelling in his chest like he'd just delivered righteous judgment. "This isn't some charity shelter," he barked, voice reverberating across the tiled lobby. "This is the Crest Hill Police Department. You don't belong here. Get out. Now." Around the perimeter, a few civilians waiting in hard plastic chairs recoiled in silence, their mouths parted in disbelief. One younger officer, standing stiffly in the corner with a stack of files in hand, stared like a deer in headlights, not moving, not intervening, just watching. The woman, soaked, quiet, and yet unshaken, lifted her head. Water trickled from her eyelashes, past her cheeks, but her gaze was crystalline and cutting. No longer shielded by the brim of her cap, her eyes fixed on Officer Muntz with chilling intensity. "My kind," she echoed, each syllable resonant and firm. "What exactly do you mean by that, officer?" There was a pause. The tension pressed on every chest in the room. To them, she had been just another person, someone easily ignored, dismissed, or worse, mistreated without consequence. But what they didn't know was that just a week earlier, she had been sworn in under a different name, in a far more formal setting. Camille Derricks, 41 years old, had recently accepted the role of police chief for Crest Hill City. A decorated African-American officer with a sterling reputation, Camille had earned her stripes in a major coastal city where she'd reformed a fractured department, turned public opinion, and implemented policy rooted in fairness, de-escalation, and respect. Crest Hill, though smaller, faced a similar rot: strained relations with minority communities, rising complaints, and an entrenched culture that resisted change. It was her mission to identify the sources of that resistance. And so, she didn't show up in a polished patrol SUV or flanked by deputies. That morning, she'd left her badge behind, dressed in worn jeans and a plain t-shirt, donned a battered cap, and drove a borrowed sedan across town to the Crest Hill Division, one of the departments with the highest complaint rates and the least accountability. She called herself Lena Morris that day, just a regular black woman from the east end of town, claiming she needed help with a civil issue, a noisy, threatening upstairs neighbor. Nothing that should send alarm bells, but enough to test the frontline service of a man she had read far too much about in internal reports. Officer Gerald Muntz had served nearly 20 years, the last 8 behind a desk due to injury. His file overflowed with flagged interactions, verbal misconduct, public complaints of racial bias, outright hostility. Most cases had been dismissed for lack of corroboration. Camille had seen enough to know Muntz had become a symbol of the very problems she was hired to address. But she had needed proof. That morning, she got it. From the moment she'd stepped inside, the man hadn't even looked up from his phone. When he finally did, his gaze had crawled over her like she was grime on his shoes. When she requested help filing a report of harassment, he'd mocked her, called it gossip, said she was wasting police time, waved her off like trash on the sidewalk. But when she calmly pushed back, when she asked for his badge number, his full name, he snapped. Fury twisted his face. The bottle flew. Water rained down. And now, standing drenched in the middle of the lobby, she pulled off her cap slowly and deliberately. The soaked curls beneath clung to her skin, but what mattered now was that her full face was exposed, strong, unmistakable, recognizable to anyone who had glanced at the internal appointment bulletin 2 weeks ago. "I am Camille Derricks," she said, her voice ringing with precise control. Chief of Police for Crest Hill. I came here undercover to assess how citizens are treated at this station. Gasps rippled across the room. The young officer in the corner nearly dropped his files. Officer Muntz's mouth fell open. His eyes searched her face. His hands trembled. The bottle dropped from his grip with a hollow clang. No, ma'am. I didn't know. His words choked as he tried to back away. Chief Derricks, I didn't know it was you. I didn't recognize, I swear. You shouldn't have needed to recognize me, she cut in coldly. You should have shown basic decency to someone asking for help. That is your job. He stammered, begged, fell to his knees, pleading for mercy, talking about his wife, his kids, his mortgage, his stress. But Camille remained unmoved. This wasn't a momentary lapse. This was a habit, a culture, one I intend to dismantle. She called the young officer forward. Find Lieutenant Faulkner. Now. Within minutes, the division supervisor arrived, aghast at the scene, his new chief soaking wet, Muntz on the floor, the lobby thick with disbelief. Lieutenant, Camille said firmly. Officer Muntz is suspended effective immediately. Disarm him. Remove his badge and escort him to a secure room. Internal Affairs is on their way. The lieutenant did not hesitate. Orders were given. Witnesses were identified. Security footage pulled. Within the hour, Internal Affairs descended. They interviewed everyone. They reviewed the tape. Clear as crystal, no ambiguity. They read Muntz's record. They saw the pattern. The outcome was swift and devastating. Officer Gerald Muntz was given a 1-year unpaid suspension and placed in a mandatory 2-year rehabilitation program called Reclaiming the Badge, designed for officers with chronic misconduct. The program was intense. Weekly therapy, ethics training, bias education, supervised community service in underserved neighborhoods, and quarterly evaluations. If he failed to meet any mark, his termination would be permanent. Some thought the penalty too harsh. Others thought it too soft. But Chief Derricks stood by it. Her purpose wasn't revenge. It was repair. And that couldn't happen without change. The department trembled. Some praised her courage. Others grumbled about entrapment, loyalty, honor. But they were warned. The days of unchecked power were over. The system would now watch the watchers. Derricks continued her reforms, not with vengeance, but with vigilance. She met with community leaders, overhauled the complaint system, introduced transparency protocols, and held weekly accountability forums. She became a lightning rod for both criticism and hope. As for Muntz, his journey through the Second Chance program was bitter and grueling. Whether he would come out changed was uncertain. But now, the burden of proof was his. The incident was never made into a spectacle. No press conferences. No names in headlines. Just a single internal report circulated through the force, a reminder that silence could no longer shield misconduct. The real test of justice, Chief Derricks believed, wasn't what happened when someone watched. It was what happened when no one was supposed to be. And on that day, in a soaked t-shirt, stripped of title and expectation, she watched. And the truth showed itself.